With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Coming up on this episode of the Mario Rosenstock Podcast.
Have you changed your idea through your maybe the last 30 years or so of what happens when we pass?
No, I mean, nobody knows, but there's pretty conclusive evidence that it's not great. I don't, the party's over, and you've got to go.
Yeah.
Everyone who's been to a good party will understand that concept.
After presenting over 2,000 episodes of The Stand, one of Ireland's best-loved podcasts and one of my favourite podcasts, Eamon Dunphy has decided to hang up the mic. Well, for the time being anyway. Because knowing Dunphy, his next big project is already underway. I've always loved interviewing Eamon. I've always loved talking to Eamon. He is a great storyteller. About that, there is no doubt whatsoever, and has some amazing stories. He's never shy about expressing his strongly held opinions, and he's not afraid to change them either. Cognitive dissonance, baby. Cognitive dissonance. But Eamon is also an incredibly hard worker, something I've witnessed firsthand throughout the years. He's a grafter. I love grafters. I've always aspired to being a grafter myself. And he's always pushing to be the best at what he does, which is why I have no doubt that The Stand and the end of The Stand is simply the start of his next adventure. And in this episode, we find out what that adventure might be, as well as getting stuck right into some of the big issues and personalities that are grinding Dunphy's gears right now.
Back in the day, is only podcasts were seen as the last refuge of the beaten ducket. And I was, perhaps people thought, well, that's the end of him. And all of a sudden, Mick Jagger walked in. And I was sitting there, I said, "Hey, Mick." As you do.
Yeah.
And he said, "Have you seen Paul McGuinness?"
It's a bizarre
true story, yeah.
Bizarre, yeah.
And I said, "No, I haven't seen him. He usually comes in." I said,
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, if he comes in, I was looking for him." That takes the West. It takes the democratic world into a very, very dark place indeed. And that means us too, because he's got to come for Ireland. And I sang when I was 17 for Gay, and it was lovely. It's a very treasured sort of memory I have.
17.
Anyway, it was a very good year.
Yeah, it was a very good year.
For small town girls and bright summer nights.
My full, unadulterated chat with the marvellous Eamon Dunphy coming right up. After, well, it's a bit of comedy because it's Dunphy, the voicemails must have been on fire, mustn't they? Hi, you've reached the Mario Rosenstock Podcast. Please leave a message.
Mario, Matt Cooper here. Very much looking forward to today's podcast with Eamon Dunphy. Eamon, message for you. We're both very much a kind of a kindred spirit, both last word presenters, both turned podcasters. However, mano a mano, any advice on how to get rid of an overbearing co-host? Yates is starting to do my fucking head in. Good luck.
Oh yeah, Eamon. Oh yeah, Mario. John Giles here. Eamon, the stand is finished, so I've been getting a few calls in and out. Do you know anything about these people called My Therapist Ghosted Me? They want me to do football for them every Thursday, Eamon. Or they said something about balls anyway. Good luck.
Yes, Mario. This is President Michael D Higgins. Message for Eamon Dunphy. Mr. Dunphy, I hear you've been bad-mouthing me around town recently, accusing me of being outspoken. Me? Outspoken? Boss, kettle black. Good luck to you. Don't bother running for president, by the way.
Oh, how's it going? It's Roy Keane here. Can't believe I'm going to listen to this podcast. I hear Eamon's giving it up. And now what's he going to do? Write a book. Write a book. The last refuge of a scoundrel. Writing a book. There's only one worse thing than writing a book, and that's being a pundit at the end of the... Sorry about that. Could I retract voicemails?
And more exclusive comedy every week on the Mario Rosenstock podcast. Eamon Dunphy is coming up. By the way, if you have any comments to make on this episode, any other episodes, any suggestions for episodes, guests, comedy sketches, etc., it's mariorosenstock@gmail.com. And now for one of the biggest moments of this episode. I am delighted to announce a new sponsor to the Mario Rosenstock podcast, and that is Deluxe Bathrooms. Deluxe Bathrooms, thank you. Welcome on board. You are the new sponsor of the Mario Rosenstock podcast. We hope to have a beautiful and friendly relationship with you because Deluxe Bathrooms is Ireland's premium bathroom and tile retailer. And if you're dreaming of a bathroom that combines luxury, which we all are, functionality, which we all are, and style, they've got you covered, and at a great price too. More of that to come, because the Love Your Bathroom sale is now on. Love Your Bathroom sale. You could save up to 70% store-wide on Europe's biggest brands. There's freestanding baths from €699, shower screens €199, vanities from €135, toilets from €149. The list goes on and on. Prices have been slashed on this sale on all of the premium products that you'll need to create the bathroom of your dreams. So check out the Love Your Bathroom sale in store at Dundalk Retail Park and Little Island in Cork, or online at deluxebathrooms.ie. The sale is on now and must end on March 2nd. So head on down to your nearest Deluxe Bathrooms showroom, and you know what? You might just spot a famous face or two.
Sabine.
Yes, Michael D.
Or Sabina, or whatever you call yourself. Listen.
Go ahead.
As President of Ireland, I am cognizant that this is a romantic time of year, so I wanted to give you this.
Oh, thank you. A picture of a toilet.
Well, it's not just any toilet, woman. It's a toilet from Deluxe Bathrooms.
Well, it's very nice.
They're having a sale. Deluxebathrooms.ie.
Right.
I was thinking if we strike now, we can get this toilet into the Orus downstairs. The other one is knackered. Sabine! Sabine!
Why stop at a toilet?
What are you talking about?
Look at this. Vanities from €135. Shower screens €199. Freestanding baths €699.
Now, hold on a second. I was talking just about a toilet.
Can you imagine me lying in a freestanding bath from Deluxe Bathrooms?
Well, I'd rather not if you don't mind, woman, but...
February 6th to March 2nd. What are we waiting for?
Where are you going, woman?
To log on to deluxebathrooms.ie.
We can't afford everything.
Stick it on expenses. We're out of there in November anyway.
She has a point.
The Love Your Bathroom sale, now on at deluxebathrooms.ie. Fit for a president. So wonderful to have Martin and all the gang at Deluxe Bathrooms on board with the Mario Rosenstock podcast. And they've picked a fantastic week to start their sponsorship because Eamon Dunphy is our first guest. And let's cross straight over to the studio now and get into conversation with what is one of Ireland's most intelligent, interesting and at times incendiary characters, the great Eamon Dunphy.
Eamon, listen, thanks a million for doing the podcast. And thanks down through the years for supporting me in everything I've done. You did the first episode of my radio show, The Sunday Roast on Today FM. You did one of the first episodes of my podcast. You appeared live in my podcast in the 22 show, in the 22 place in town. And I really am very grateful for you coming in.
No, it's a great pleasure. I'm a big fan.
And so am I of you. And the reason I say that is because you... for about 9 years there, we're doing The Stand. I think I'd listened to every episode, pretty much, of The Stand. 2,000 episodes. Yeah. It was my constant companion on my walks. It has been a terrific podcast. And you're quitting it. Why?
Well, I was doing with my wife, Jane Gogan, and she was a huge part of it and made big decisions about building a studio, which we were fortunate. Had we not done it, COVID would have killed us, and we wouldn't have been able to continue. And I have to write the second part of my autobiography. So she's got something to do. I've got something to do that we really ought to do, and therefore, reluctantly, we decided this is when we stop. And it's hard to stop, as you know, you do your own work so successfully. But work is very important, and to me, to you, I know, and to Jane too. So it's important to people And the hardest thing is to stop when you're going well.
Mm-hmm. Is it something you could return to?
Yes.
So it's not off the cards?
It's not off the cards, but it's not my focus now.
Yeah.
And it's another fact of life that unless you're properly focused and 100% committed to what you're doing, the work suffers.
Why did you start the podcast?
I started the podcast because I left RTE Sport, the television end of it, which is the only part of RTE I'd ever been involved in. And I decided that this wasn't going to be the end, that I wanted to try a podcast. I love radio. I loved working on radio, and we worked on radio together when Today FM started, actually. So I wanted to continue on my own terms, be my own boss, and see if I could make it work. And if I enjoyed it, I could make it work. I did enjoy it. Jane also had left RTE, so she wanted a new start. So we did it together.
You were saying outside to me when we were off air, you were saying when you started the podcast, people are going, oh, Dunphy's finished. There he goes. It's all over. A podcast.
Yeah.
Well, things have come full circle really in the world of podcasting, haven't they?
They have, yes. I mean, podcasts are huge now. In the American election, for example, this fellow Joe Rogan. Kamala Harris interestingly refused to do his show, which has I don't know how many million listeners, but it's the biggest podcast in the world. But Trump did 3 hours. But you're right to say that back in the day, and the day is only like a few years ago, podcasts were seen as the last refuge of the beaten docket. And I was perhaps people thought, well, that's the end of him. But we made it work. We persevered, and we grew an audience, doing basically news and current affairs stories, but doing them in long form. In other words, half an hour. And I believe in long form journalism, whether it's in print or in broadcasting. It takes time to explain the Trump phenomenon. We had one brilliant reporter in Washington.
Niall Stanage.
And the Trump phenomenon is something that has changed our world, and it continues to change it in a very dark way now. And you really needed to understand, and we got on it from the start. Trump is going to make a difference, where people are laughing at him. But he's not funny. And we had a great reporter there. So we, uniquely among Irish sort of media at the time, I mean, people didn't take Trump seriously. They laughed at him, mocked him, and all of that. But if you fast forward to today, Mario, he's not funny anymore.
Do you sort of, the very moment you give up the podcast is the moment he has ascended to his second term? And you've seen what's happened in the first 17 days of the second term. And you're not going, this is 5 episodes a week I could be doing on Trump. Stanage.
Yes, I mean, obviously he has now, he's the most powerful person in the world, the most powerful politician in the world, and the most dangerous politician in the world, because he has now embarked on a revolution. And as we speak, people are losing their jobs, their lives. Every member of the CIA has been put on notice, told they're going to be sacked. Everyone. And their names have been published. The
FBI is being
has been cleaned out. So this is the Department of Education. He's gone scrap. He believes education should be given to the states rather than the national government. You could make that case, actually. But he's doing things that were unthinkable. And his latest deliberations on Gaza have sort of made people laugh, but they haven't made Palestinians laugh. And he's persisting, and it's very, very serious. And I think a lot of people now fear we could have a world war, and he will be in the middle of it. But of course, his great claim at the moment is he doesn't get involved in any wars, doesn't start any wars, and doesn't want to be in any wars. But the world is now a much more dangerous place, in my view, than it was. And it's an obligation, I think, for all journalists who are working in the current affairs field to look at Trump, take him seriously, and report what he's doing. Just one good example of it, Mario. Everyone's on about the tariffs. He's going to put on Canada or Mexico or Europe. But behind the tariffs, there's something much more serious. I mean, US aid, he's sacked everyone. There's about 30,000 people, I think, or maybe more. They're gone. And he's going to keep a skeleton staff there. But that means for where US aid was going, to the poorest places in the world. And actually, Bono was involved with George W. Bush. And they sent $15 billion, the Americans, under George W. Bush to combat HIV AIDS in South Africa. And it was a huge thing. But I talked to Bono about it. I met him in Rainhouse one night, and I was slagging off Joe. I said, "What are you doing with that George W. Bush?" And he told me the story. He said, "I went to him and I explained it to him. He wrote a check for $15 billion. Now, all that's gone. This is the richest country in the world, hurting the poorest people in the world. This is very serious.
I understand.
It's much more serious than tariffs."
Yes, and ironically, you said, or funnily enough, you said there, you could be, looking at a war situation, and it's not even bizarre to think that the war situation could be the one we never even dreamed of. It could be Europe against America, for God's sake.
Well, yeah, he's going to attack Europe. Yeah. You see, he and Musk, who clearly has bought his way into power. No Congress committee or no Senate committee has given Musk the right or the authorization to be doing the job he's doing. And he's gutting the state. They want to, people don't quite get it, but they want to destroy government. They want to destroy...
It's Project 2025.
It is, exactly. Project 2025, it comes from the Heritage Foundation, which is a think tank, a right-wing think tank. The Heritage Foundation has been there for decades, and it's always been right of centre. But now, in anticipation of Trump's, elevation to the second term as a president, they brought out something called Project 2025, which was really a fascist manifesto. And Trump said, nothing to do with him, said, I don't want anything about it. But of course, it was written and conceived by people who were part of his team, his gang. Yeah, and they're in now, and they're doing, as you say, they're enacting.
Particularly, there's this guy Vought, Vought, this fella.
Yeah.
He was around at the OMB in the first Trump term.
Yes.
And now he's going to be heading up this whole area of gutting the federal agencies.
Yes, I mean, yeah, they'll just, you see, they've given notice to all the CIA, the FBI people, any FBI person who worked on, for example, the January 6th case against Trump. And that's actually, one way or another, could be involved thousands of people doing what they were told to do, obliged to do. For doing that, they're going to get sacked. But there's going to be a tyranny around it. Sacked, your career's gone. In the case of the CIA people, well, they're identified. They're identifiable because their names are out there. Their first names with the initial of their second names.
Yeah.
Thousands of people.
Yeah.
Now, it won't take foreign agencies long to break that code.
Yeah.
And these people are at risk.
Yeah.
Now, and of course, he's made the head of American intelligence, a woman, Tulsi Gabbard, who is an admirer of Putin.
And Assad.
And Assad and Putin, an apologist for them. She's the head. So every piece of intelligence that would go between Britain and the European allies of America, she goes to her desk. Now, how could the British trust America, which is the most powerful country in the world, and the most necessary, if China or Russia were the enemy? The head of that, the person who sees all the intelligence of where it's come from, is a woman who really doesn't believe in democracy.
We're reaching a funny stage as well, just briefly, because some of the courts now, right, have hit back at Trump.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And they said, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. Right? Now, you're going to reach a crux here, because the court order then needs to be put into operation by the Department of Justice. Department of Justice enact the court orders.
Yeah.
If the Department of Justice is in Trump's hand, and he says,
which it is,
don't enact the court order, we're then at a constitutional crisis in America where the judges are ordering one thing and the DOJ won't do it. So you were then at a crossroads.
Well, the problem, and this is the clincher, the Supreme Court, 3 of its right-wing members were appointed by Donald Trump, and they have found almost always in his favour. So the Supreme Court is the most important institution in America, given their litigation is a huge thing, and he's got that sewn up.
Eamon,
now that takes the West. It takes the democratic world into a very, very dark place indeed. And that means us too, because he's got to come for Ireland sooner rather than later.
I know, and even online, which is dominated now with an ex by Musk, you see a lot of memes going around of comedy memes like the end of Western civilization. Yay!
Yeah.
And it's like they're openly celebrating the idea that Western civilization could be finished. So Musk, and in a sense, by proxy, Trump, are in a sense against the idea of Western civilization.
Yes.
They want to kind of a Steve Bannon, a kind of an anarchy, a nihilism, a kind of a breakdown of society, a disorder, a broligarchy, the so-called bros and oligarchy.
Yeah.
So this kind of mad sort of Wild West where a few very, very wealthy people exist and everybody else is basically out in the street.
Yes. Well, they think aid, for example, is an indulgence. They think the aid agency is full of thousands of do-gooders, bluffers. They're like rich guys in a bar.
Back of a fag.
Yeah, just voicing.
Yeah.
Their
golf club stuff.
Well, it is golf club stuff made into government, and we don't know the outcome. But what is worrying? It depends on Europe. Europe is the only entity, political entity, that can match America for money, power, people, and he's going after Europe with, he says, tariffs. But we don't know. They have a few followers in Europe, in Hungary. For example, the Prime Minister there is a fan of Trump's, a friend of Trump's indeed, and Slovakia, Italy could be a runner because that woman there is, she is an admirer of Mussolini
and Musk,
and Trump. So we're in a very dangerous place.
Yeah.
But they are, as you so eloquently put it, they're like the rich boys in the golf club, let loose.
Eamon, use your Eamon Dunphy head now. And what I mean by the Eamon Dunphy head is the boy that grew up in Dublin, the boy that grew up, and you've met a lot of people in your life. You've met a lot of funny people. You've met a lot of strange people.
Yes.
And you even came up with names, all sorts of names: spoofers, spivs, chancers.
Yep.
Right? Decent skins, which is another type of person. Official Ireland, which is another type of person. Trump would go on about deep state and strain the swamp and all this. But you've met a lot of people. You've met a lot of people in high places, medium places, low places.
Yeah.
What kind of a guy do you think Donald Trump is from that perspective, that Eamon Dunphy perspective? What kind of a fella do you think he is?
I think he's a con man. I think he's kind of property developer, dodgy deals, and he was a kind of spiv. Big time spiv, New York. No one ever respected him in New York, but part of what he's doing in his head would be revenge for the fact that respectable New York society never embraced him, even though he might have been the richest guy in town, or he might not have been the richest guy in town, but if he'd have paid his bills, he wouldn't. But he's a kind of chancer. I could compare him to people in Ireland that I'm acquainted with as well, and it would be well known, but that wouldn't be fair. I'm not sure whether Trump wouldn't be fair on or them, but it's he's a guy.
Yeah,
it's kind of Forrest Gump, but with menace.
Very interesting. Did you see The Apprentice, the film?
Yes, it was bad,
but it did shine a light.
Oh, it did on Cohen.
On Cohen,
his
Roy
mentor.
Cohen.
Yeah. Well, Cohen was a very serious dude, and he was
McCarthy,
the McCarthy era, and he was on that. He was one of McCarthy's guides, advisors, legal advisors, and he's a very, very malicious, dark character.
Cohen taught Trump never, ever, ever back down.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever admit defeat. Yeah. On the contrary, declare victory.
Yes.
When you lose, declare that you've won.
Yes.
If you get attacked, double down and counterattack viciously.
Yes.
So if somebody attacks you, you counter-sue 3 times.
Yes.
And this is how you eventually wear people down. There's horrific stories, like little online, Eamon, of people who tell the story of, I have a friend, he was a contractor, a builder. He worked for Trump. I said, are you sure you want to do this? And he said, yeah, it's a 3.5 million deal. It'll take care of my family. 5 years later, after trying to get the money out of Trump, he committed suicide in his garage, blew his own brains out because he couldn't even get paid by Trump. These people are being laid to waste everywhere in the sort of wasteland of Trump that he's left behind, you know?
Yes.
Anyway, a spiv and Forrest Gump with menace. I think that's a good way of describing. Let's move on, Eamon. Let's move on to you. You're writing your second autobiography. A lot of people don't get one autobiography. You're getting 2 out of it.
Yeah, well, maybe people might say one's enough, or none's enough.
Well, I read the first one, The Rocky Road. Amazing. So what's the second one going to be about?
It's going to be about, I think, more fun, talking about people I knew. There was a whole culture when the economy was booming in the noughties and all this, Dublin was happening. Ireland was happening, and Shelburne Hotel, the Horseshoe Bar was happening.
Reynard's,
George's
Bistro.
Lily's.
George's Bistro.
Yeah, George's Bistro, the Unicorn. And, I mean, there'd be a lot of fascinating people there. Tom Murphy, the late Tom Murphy, was a friend of mine, playwright Tom. Very serious people. Paul McGuinness was manager of U2, which were Noel Pearson, Oscar-winning producer for My Left Foot.
Shane Ross, indeed.
All kinds of interesting people were knocking around. I remember being in the Horseshoe Bar one night, and it was a Monday night, so it was quiet and not many people there. And all of a sudden, Mick Jagger walked in, and he looked around. And I was sitting there. I said, "Hey, Mick," as you do.
Yeah.
And he said, "Have you seen Paul McGuinness?"
It's a bizarre
story. Yeah.
Bizarre, yeah.
And I said, "No, I haven't seen him. He usually comes in." I said,
"Yeah." It's like a sitcom.
Yeah, and he said, "Oh, if he comes in, tell him I was looking for him." He didn't say, "Tell him Mick Jagger was looking."
Yeah.
I was looking. What?
Yeah.
I mean, Mick Jagger. You don't have to tell people.
No,
who we are.
that's mad.
But that was kind of. But there was a lot. Jerry Ryan, who I was extremely fond.
Were you?
Oh, yeah. I liked Jerry.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, he was kind of wild.
Yeah.
Bright, wild.
Motormouth.
Well, he was, yeah. He was kind of... He took life...
He was entertaining.
He was, yeah. And he was a decent guy in my terms. He wasn't sly. He was kind of wild. And I liked Jerry. I remember Jerry and Gay Byrne. The Unicorn at lunchtime on a Friday was the place. And that all of those people I mentioned might be in there at one time. And I remember you'd be there now from 12:30, 1 o'clock until 6. And then they'd boot you out because they had to let the people in for the evening or reset the tables, all that stuff. But anyway, the Gay walked in with Jerry Ryan, Gay Byrne. I had great respect and fondness for Gay. He was a very, very nice man, as well as being a great broadcaster, a really great broadcaster. And they walked in, it was about 4 o'clock. And this was an occasion, because Gay wasn't hanging out with people like us. He was a much more steady bloke. But he came in with Jerry, and I remember singing a Sinatra song for Gay. I said, "Do you want me to sing for you, Gay?" And I sang when I was 17 for Gay. And it was lovely. It's a very treasured sort of memory I have.
17.
Anyway, it was a very good year.
Yeah, it was a very good year.
It was a very good year for small town girls and bright summer nights. We'd hide from the lights on the village green. Don't make me cry.
When we were 17.
Yeah, but it was lovely. Yeah. I sang for Gay.
You love singing. I remember singing with you. I remember singing. No, you do. But I remember singing because John Giles is actually a good singer. You're not a great singer.
No.
John Giles is a good singer.
Yeah, that's right.
Because he has the whoa.
Yeah.
He has that.
Yeah.
But I remember singing the ABBA song with you one night in Lily's.
Which one?
I have a dream.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah,
we're singing with you.
Yeah, we used to.
Right.
I mean, singing wasn't approved of in Lily's by Jean, who had sadly died last year. Yeah, she was a wonderful person. She ran Lily's with authority, and she was quite stern. I didn't like any messing. Doesn't mean there wasn't messing. I mean, she sometimes. I remember a night there, Robbie Keane. He's a fantastic singer.
Right.
And like a great player, Robbie, and he's managing now in Hungary. But he's a great singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, his father was the singer, apparently, a club singer, you know. But he had the guitar, the whole lot. Gee, we had a concert. It was amazing. I wouldn't go anywhere near the singing that night. I just watched. But Robbie was a good lad.
Great story about Roy Keane singing in Lily's as well.
I was there.
Yeah.
That was the same night.
Right.
Roy sang a Bob Dylan song.
Definitely, perfect. It's 4th Street, or positively 4th Street.
Yeah.
Do you know what that song is about? That song is perfect, Roy Keane.
Really?
That song is like, the words in that song are like, think of Roy Keane when you hear this.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of nerve to say you are my friend. When I was down, you just stood there grinning.
Yeah.
It's a real song of like, it's about being real and not being real.
Yeah.
And people who are being fake and hypocritical.
Yeah.
And it's a bitter song.
Yeah, it's It is, yeah.
As well.
It's very, very Roy in many ways.
It's very. Do you remember when he got Halland?
Yes,
that's the music. That's the musical equivalent.
Yeah,
he could have been singing.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of nerve.
Yeah, and I mean, he was kind of. He's a fascinating guy. I mean, unfortunately he turns on you, whoever you are, eventually. Now, I never did anything on him. I wrote a book which was hampered by...
He asked you to write it?
He asked me to write it, yeah. And because he liked my journalism, if I can be immodest. And then he was captain of Manchester United, so I couldn't say anything. So it was, Roddy Doyle got him when he'd finished and wrote a much better book, a much more revealing book. I couldn't without screwing him, and I wasn't going to do that, you know. So unfortunately, what happened was he was happy enough with the book. I put the Haaland story in, which cost him a 6-week ban. But he did say, but I tried to cover up for him. I said, Roy didn't say that, I made it up, but they weren't buying that. But the thing is, about 6 months after the book came out, all was well. Phone call one day from his solicitor, who was the man who looked after all his stuff, and he was manager of Sunderland at the time, and I'd written a fairly critical piece about the work he was doing. And his man said, you know, we thought we were friends. I said, well, I've got to do my work, you know. I'm a journalist, and you know, and he said, well, Roy's very disappointed, which is kind of, you know, and that was the end of it. The next thing, he's on the Late Late Show with Pat Kenny, actually, and saying something about me. I don't know what it was, and that we didn't have much of a relation before I wrote the book. And we certainly didn't have one after I wrote that column. But a journalist has to be a journalist. You can't be.
You liked him, though. You liked him.
I did. I admired him.
You like rebels. You like an independent person. You like a person who's a fighter.
Yeah.
You also liked him because he was a family man, and he is a family man.
He is, yeah.
And you liked that about him. And
he had a lovely family, a lovely wife. I was in their home. I said it many times. He was very good to his own family in Cork, who weren't well off, and he's a good man in many respects. Do
you think he's? Oh, it's hard to use the word. Do you think he's a little damaged?
I think if you can't let go of the past, he's having to go with Haaland's son now, saying he's continuing
generational.
Yeah, I mean, he said, like, okay, he gets 90 goals a minute, but his feet and his general play is like a Division 2 player, a League 2 player.
Yeah.
Which is not really true.
No.
But he does continue the feud. So I've warned my kids to look out for Roy. He's a good man. His problem, I suppose, is that I don't know what his problem is. I mean, he's got everything. He's got a wonderful
Do you think he's a complex person, or do we overestimate him?
Yeah, I think he's not that complex. He was a great player. He was a great leader of players. He was a great dressing room man. But there is a life outside the dressing room, and there is a life that doesn't have to involve conflict. And in the end, he fell out with Alex Ferguson, and he said harsh things. Now, there was two tough guys there. I mean, he might have been right about Ferguson, but he left United, don't forget, after a glorious career for United and for him. He left not speaking to Ferguson, and that was a war he ran himself, you know.
Eamon, just occurred to me there. Did you ever want to manage yourself in football?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
it was my greatest dream to be a coach, and I took all my badges and did very well, got the qualifications, but I wasn't liked by management. Some of it was to do with I was in the anti-apartheid movement. Also, after Bloody Sunday, I wore the black armband, and that made me a marked man. And I didn't quite. I was so consumed by what had happened, I just did it. No problem with the crowds, even at Millwall, which is quite a hostile place for Republicans. But I knew then. There'd be no future after football because I wasn't the type that they could trust.
You told that they needed somebody that could toe the line.
Yes, I mean,
You and John nearly managed Samrock Rovers together, didn't you?
Yeah, well, his brother-in-law or one of his relatives had owned Rovers. Barton Kilcoyne, Louis Kilcoyne's brother.
Yeah.
And there was marriage there Louis was married to John's sister. And we came back with this project, but it was half-baked, and I left after a year.
Right.
So, no, I unfortunately, you pay for your... Sometimes you pay for your sins, sometimes you pay for principles. And I paid a price for... I was very active as a player, getting young players into colleges and schools. They have fantastic programs now, the Players' Union in England, to get kids who don't make it and would have given 3 or 4 years of their life to football, and they can go to college and, you know.
Am I right in thinking you might have been from, you? Tell me if I'm wrong, but that you would have admired maybe the methods of someone like Johan Cruyff?
Yes.
Because that kind of, do you know, that kind of educated, in Holland, they do still rate education as being very important to footballers.
Yes, and it was, and that was a pretty solitary campaign, but I campaigned, got the Millwall players, the Crystal Palace, Charlton, all the South London players, found a teacher who was into it, and we started it.
Yeah.
But they never forgave me for that. They didn't want any of that. So you couldn't really do anything that was politically...
Okay. Well, have you got a name for the second book yet?
No.
Yeah. Any ideas?
No. I've ideas for the book. But
where did the Rocky Road come from, the song?
The Rocky Road was given to me by a friend, Colm Tobin.
Oh, yeah.
As a favour.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't... He had to look at the book for me, and very kindly.
Yeah.
And he said, and you should call it The Rocky Road.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know what second book title will be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to write the book first.
But it'll be about your adventures, among other.
Yeah, I mean,
it's FM, your adventures in broadcasting.
Yes.
Your adventures, being owned by Dennis O'Brien and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And Shane Ross and taking on Aircom. And
all that stuff. There'll be a lot of that stuff. But more light, more about. There were some fascinating people. Anthony Cronin and I were very close friends for a very long time. Both loved horses. He used to come to France with me every summer. With his wife, Anne Haverty, who was a writer also. Tony was a marvellous man, very funny man. We were very good friends. So Dublin was, Tom Murphy was a really good friend of mine, the late Tom Murphy, and the late Anthony Cronin, sadly now. But Dublin in that period, Mario, which I know you kind of are too young to fully, but you saw a bit of it, I think, or maybe got a vibe of it. It was interesting. You could go into the horseshoe bar any night and you'd find someone interesting to talk to. It wasn't always Mick Jagger, but, you could.
Yeah.
Noel Pearson was a good friend, a very good friend.
Yeah.
And that was our little scene.
I was telling you outside about an ad I saw online there. It was an old ad from 1996. It was for the Sunday Independent, and it was like good journalism is because of good journalists. The Sunday Independent. And it had you and Declan Lynch and Paul Kimmage and all these people, Brendan O'Connor and all this, and all this sort of stuff. One of the things about your podcast, actually, just to get back to that, is you've made a career, and it's in your nature to be opinionated. But you weren't opinionated on your podcast.
No,
in fact, that was the interesting feature of your podcast. You let other people have reportage and to some extent express their opinions, but you held back on your opinion quite a lot.
Well, in the radio show, I did the last word.
In the radio show, you
I wasn't opinionated.
I think
I used to get people in.
I think people could discern where you were coming from.
Yeah,
easily.
but
you used to get angry, and you used to get.
Did I?
Well, at times, yeah, you'd get angry with union people, etc. You'd get angry, and you could tell that you didn't, let's say, like this. But in your podcast, you have been very, very kind of, let's say, objective and impartial. So that's why when you're not in the podcast, you're on this podcast now.
Yeah.
It'd be. I'm just going to. Like, so, for example, Michael D Higgins. How have you seen him? Have you seen his presidency, and maybe in relation to the Gaza and the Israel thing? How do you see that?
Well, think the presidency should be what it's meant to be, an honorary position. The only power that the Constitution gives to the President of Ireland is the power to dissolve or not to Dáil Éireann. That's it. And in order to do that job properly, he or she have to be seen to be impartial. So a president who is partial,
which he is,
can't properly fulfill the functions of the presidency.
Do you not think, for example, in relation to something like Palestine and Gaza, that he is expressing, let's say, the views of large...
But it's not... The presidency expressly forbids that kind of thing. And if anyone bothered with the Constitution and looked at it, and the reasons why, then they'd understand that. Yeah. I don't believe in what the presidency of Mary Robinson was about. It was wrong. When Mary Robinson shook hands with Gerry Adams, that was a political act. Presidencies expressly forbids that. The Constitution expressly forbids that. And there's a good reason if you were to go back down the decades. And if you go forward, nobody elected a president, in my view, to have a political opinions and to speak on behalf of Ireland. And I think what Michael D is doing is wrong.
Would you vote for Bertie Ahern for president?
Well, Bertie Ahern, history will judge Bertie Ahern very kindly, mainly because of the Good Friday Agreement, which he did. He also was elected 3 times and held coalition governments together. I think that what he was involved in, that people have criticised him for, was dig-outs, I think is the word. It was just petty stuff. And there was that in. It was in Irish politics.
It was endemic.
And it was endemic, yeah. And I don't think it is. I wouldn't...
in fairness to Ahern, right? In fairness to Ahern, and I've received some criticism over this as well, personally, for, if you like, the sketches that I was doing, particularly over the 10 years that Ahern was around, that they made him cuddly and likeable and all this sort of stuff. I was merely reflecting the Bertie Ahern that the people saw.
Yes.
And which I thought he was cuter than a cute whore about that as well, right?
Yeah.
But in relation to the money and the dig-outs, we're not talking here about a guy who was trying to enrich himself.
No,
let's be honest about
it.
This is not a kind of a Trump, hollowing out of a meme coin or a Bitcoin or something to make or emoluments to make yourself rich.
No, I don't think Bertie was corrupt.
So that's one thing. I don't think. And
I like him. I've had him on the podcast. He's been good enough to come on. I think maybe the first person to do it. I don't know, but I think he's had a raw deal. Yeah. To be honest with you.
Did you see that the rumor that Fintan O'Toole?
I did. Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think it's laughable, pompous, and should be laughed at.
It strikes me that
he supported Mary Robinson. He supports Michael D, I'm sure. And if you get me started on Fintan O'Toole, I'll never stop. Because this week, there was a piece to be written. There were many pieces to be written about what was going on in Gaza or what's going on anywhere in Trump land. And he launched an attack on Micheál Martin on Tuesday. I couldn't believe it. I thought, this guy's something else. Micheál Martin, I think, has been an outstanding leader. He saved the Fianna Fáil party. He's given moral leadership and clarity on the Gaza thing. And here he gets lashed on the opinion page of the Irish Times by Fintan O'Toole For God's sake.
Having said that, though, you were one of the first people to really sort of bring this idea into the kind of Irish public, common journalistic idea of you combated the whole idea of saying U-turns by saying, well, you can believe two things at the same time, and also you can change your mind about something, and you can do a U-turn, and that's one of the interesting things I've always found about politics. People going, you did a U-turn. Yeah. Well, U-turns aren't bad when it's the right thing to change your mind.
No, I agree with you, and the idea of the holding you the test of a first-class mind, it is said, is the capacity to hold two utterly opposing views in your mind at the same time, and believe in both of them.
And with that in mind, I believe that you think Fintan O'Toole is also a great journalist at times.
There's a stunning silence.
But I've heard you actually on your podcast going, there was a great article by Fintan O'Toole in today's.
If you can dig that out, I'll give you a prize.
You have.
Well, I may have, but
you've also referred to him as the paper in the kind of the paper of record way. So you'd be arguing with somebody and be going, no, Fintan O'Toole said that, and you weren't doing it. No, you have.
Well, you'll have to dig that out, and
you respect him to a certain extent.
I respect Fintan O'Toole's.
Yeah. Have you read his book? We don't know ourselves.
I understand that he said on the radio the other day that he's written 28 books.
Well, what's wrong with writing 28 books?
I think they must be short books.
Have you read We Don't Know Ourselves?
No.
It's fucking excellent.
Is it?
Yeah. It's kind of a history of modern Ireland as seen from his Zelig-like.
Well, you see, you must remember, if someone was interviewing Fintan O'Toole, they'd never say, what do you think of the Sunday Independent? And if they did, it's obvious what he thinks of the Sunday Independent. What do you think of Angus Fanning? What do you think? And Angus Fanning was a brilliant editor, but he went down the plug hole reputation-wise with all the others by these people like Fintan O'Toole would be, that said it was muck and it's this and that, The Sunday Independent was horrible at times, but it was important at times as well. And I don't want to, Fintan O'Toole, when he's president, I clearly I won't be in the park for dinner.
Okay.
And I've no animus against Fintan O'Toole. Yeah. We were pals in a way when we were all young. A little bit of pals, we'd have lunch, the odd lunch together, and we call him Tobinas, another. Yeah. I told you earlier, did a big favour to me when I was in trouble with my book for a title. I'm not a bitter person.
No, I know that. But
but I'm not a fan.
No, fine.
And I don't think he should aspire to be president, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think it was mainly put to him rather than anything else, and he sort of said, "Oh well, if I was asked it."
Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of. I think the signal is he would.
Yeah, definitely. He said he wouldn't. How could you turn down such an offer?
Being president entails, Mario.
Well, according to you, nothing.
It does.
It's an honorary title.
Cutting ribbons, going to boring things.
Well, unless you're Michael D. Higgins.
Every day. But Michael D. Higgins was in politics. I remember Michael D. Higgins when he was in the cabinet. And nothing happened, Mario, that you could remotely call socialism.
No, not really.
What about that then? Is that a surprise? Dick Spring appointed Michael D. I think he felt he had to.
I don't think Dick Spring was a socialist.
No, he wasn't. But he tolerated Michael D. for one term, I think. But
Michael D. brought Mel Gibson to Ireland.
Well, it's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I'm not going to tell you a lie.
No. I know you're not.
I'm no great fan of Michael D.
That's fine. We can skip that.
In fact,
do you know who one of the characters that's most loved, what surprising, sometimes you do a character on the radio, right?
Yeah.
And you go, that character will be popular.
Yes.
Bertie, for example.
Yes.
Roy Keane.
Yeah.
Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you'll do a character and you think it'll be popular and it isn't popular.
Yeah.
And you go, well, why didn't that take off? You can't read people. Sometimes you'll do a character, you won't have any hope for it at all. And sometimes something happens.
Yeah.
One such character in the early days of Gift Grub was Vincent Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Vincent Brown was a great character on Gift Grub. And we used to go, well, our audience even know who he is.
Exactly.
They loved him.
Yeah. Well,
and your opinion of Vincent?
Vincent gave me a great break. he gave me the break that got me into journalism.
Oh.
And he sent me down to the first iteration of the Sunday Tribune. And he told the guy who owned it and was editing it, who used to own Hibernia, he said, you've got no chance if you don't sign this guy. He's the hottest thing. He's the best thing ever. And that was a great favour to me, and it helped me greatly. But everybody in journalism who worked around Vincent, has their horror stories, perhaps, and didn't, in the end, weren't able to stay with the chaos. And that includes Fintan O'Toole. He gave Fintan a break, he gave people breaks. But he also did some pretty tough things. And, he's writing a book now, supposed to be.
About Haughey.
Well, yeah, but that's been gone for 45 years.
I know, since McGill.
Yeah.
Come here. You're 80 in August.
I am.
And you exercise every day?
Yeah.
You walk twice a day?
Oh, I do, yeah.
And you're working?
Yes.
Fairly rigorously?
Yes, thank God.
On the book just at the moment?
On the book now, yes.
How do you feel about...
And I work for the Irish Daily Star.
Yes, of course.
I enjoy doing, yeah.
How do you feel as you reach 80 in terms of... I want to ask you about mortality. I mean, just the idea of... I don't know what it's like to be 80.
Yeah.
But tell me about it. Like, do you lie in bed sometimes at night with your eyes open, looking up at the ceiling going, what the fuck is this all about? Where does it go?
No, I don't. But obviously when you get old, which is supposed to be old,
do you still feel like 33?
Yeah.
Is that at what age do you feel in your mind?
Like
early 30s?
Yeah.
Is that it?
I feel, I'm a bit sort of giddy, happy, grateful for so much. And also when you get old, there's an awful lot you can be remorseful about what happened to your parents, the poverty they knew.
Yes.
What happened, and you worry what happened to your children.
Yes.
And when you see a monster like Trump, you think, what's going to happen to my kids and my family? And you do, unless you haven't got any reflective power. You do reflect on the nature of life and on the great happiness of life that you get from, in my case, my children, Jane, my mother, father, brother, all of whom have passed on now. But you also must understand that no one's getting out of here alive, Mario. And that applies to everybody, and that's the deal.
As Bob Dylan says in a great song called It's Not Dark Yet, But It's Getting There.
Yeah.
He says, I was born here and I'll die here.
Yeah.
Against my will.
Yes.
And I think it's a great line. The idea that he
No,
didn't ask to be born.
Yeah.
He didn't ask to die.
No.
He just got put here.
Yeah, and I think you have to be, if you have the capacity for humility, you have to understand your place in the order of things. And this is the deal.
You read a lot.
I used to read a lot. Work gets in the way of it now sometimes. But I just bought a book about Ronald Reagan, actually.
Yeah, but I don't think it's all biography, and I don't think it's all political biography. I think
not poetry, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Poetry. I mean, what happens with this reflective moment of poetry? Have you changed your idea through your maybe the last 30 years or so of what happens when we pass?
No, I mean, nobody knows, but there's pretty conclusive evidence that it's not great. I don't.
It's not great.
I think.
Well, nothingness might be okay.
Well,
I presume you're talking about nothingness. You're not talking about hellfire and brimstone
no,
here.
No. It's just, the party's over.
Okay.
And you've got to go.
Yeah.
And that's, everyone who's been to a good party will understand that concept.
Let me push you further then. The party's over and you go. Yeah. Is there any remnants of consciousness left over at all? Or is it just the end?
I don't know is my answer. And I think you don't need to know. I think you basically need to live your life as well as you can, for as long as you can, and each day at a time. And you need to understand that, I think, and you do, when you get old, that it's going to be not too long before you're gone. But you don't want to be dwelling on that. Otherwise, you go mad. So live your life, the life that God gave you, each day.
Eamon, that's it. I want to thank you very much for coming in and talking to me. I can't wait to read the second installment of this autobiography.
No, neither can I.
I know that somewhere in there, I'll be down there. I'll be in page 742.
No, you won't.
Down in George's Bistro.
Yeah, we've been there. I was there with Michael D Higgins one night and a few other people. And Michael D always used to walk around town. This was when he was living amongst us, with his book of poems.
Yeah.
In his little thing.
And he's a poet himself, of course.
Of course he is, yeah.
Eamon, thanks a million.
It's a pleasure, Mario. I really like you. I really admire you, and I've known you from the get-go. And you've been a lovely guy, and you're a very talented guy. And I understand you've sold out 3 Arena for 6,000 people.
Yeah.
That can't be bad, baby.
Thank you, Eamon. Thank you.
And my thanks, as always, to Eamon Dunphy for coming in and talking to me. Eamon has always supported all my projects in the past, particularly when I started them, and I will be eternally grateful for that. And I really do hope some stage The Stand comes back, and I will be reading with relish the second volume of his autobiography when it comes out. Don't forget, Deluxe Bathrooms is our new sponsor. Their sale starts on February 6th and must end on March 2nd. Check out the Love Your Bathroom sale in store at Dundalk Retail Park and Little Island in Cork, or online at deluxebathrooms.ie. Thanks to all of you for listening. You, of course, are the special ones. You know who the special ones are? You are fantastic. Thank you for listening. Tell one other person about this podcast. Come back and see me next week, same time, same place. Take care.